Super. Evening, guys. Thank you for joining us on the Zoom, talking about managing spaniels and sports spaniels and working spaniels and all spaniels. Those that haven't met Georgie, oh, hold on, somebody's unmuted themselves. Haven't met Georgie. She is one of the Spaniel queens, I'm sure, and has been working spaniels in various roles for quite a period of time now. So we're going to get her to talk about spaniels. I'll get to introduce herself now, and then we'll have a bit of a chat. If you have any questions as we go along, I've popped them in the chat, or just wait to the end to bring them up so we can just keep going. But yeah, so super. I'm going to hand straight over to you, Georgie, and if you can introduce yourself and tell us all about your spaniels.
Hi, I'm Georgie. So I've had spaniels my oldest one is coming up, I think she's 8 now-ish. There's so many I can't remember. But yeah, she's 8, I think. So first got into spaniels when I was in SAR. Met some really cool springers, so decided that my next dog would be a spaniel. My first one was a working lab. We still have working labs to keep us sane with the spaniels as well. But since then, started breeding springers, only really from my springer, and then a couple of friends that I've got, children, puppies from her. Basically trying to sort of have springers that can think, and not the springers that can't, or are maybe anxious, or too motivated that they can't function or can't concentrate. So springers and cockers are probably the biggest percentage of what I teach with clients' dogs. So it's not only my own spaniels, it's client spaniels. I don't think I do a workshop where there isn't at least a couple of spaniels, which makes me happy. But yeah, they are, I guess if you are on this webinar, then you have spaniels. But yeah, they're mental, but we all love them.
They are quite crazy, aren't they? Especially like compared to the labs who come half trained, and then their spaniels, they say, die half trained.
Yeah, or maybe not even that.
So tell us a little bit more about your SAR journey, if you can, then, Georgie, please.
Yeah. So I started with, like I said, with my working lab. So started with live air scent. So he was an air scent dog, so worked off the lead, searching for any human scent. So obviously Labrador was ideal for that, because I didn't have to worry about if there was loads of pheasants in the area or anything like that. But when I started getting interested in the cadaver side of things and drown victim search, then that was when I got into the spaniels, because obviously size came into it. Having a massive Labrador on a boat isn't quite as convenient as having a spaniel on the boat. But also for drown victim search and a lot of different disciplines within detection, I feel like the spaniels hunt drive, so how much they actually like to search and want to search, makes them the ideal breed. They're the ideal breed for me. So I had my Springer for that, and then got into training her for drown victim search, and her drive to search is what made her as good at what she does, rather than, I think sometimes you get some of the breeds that want to please you or work for you, because a lot of the search and rescue stuff with all disciplines within SAR, really the dogs are mainly doing blank searches. So if you're on an actual search, you're rarely getting a find. So it's really, really important to have a dog that can cope with that. And I feel like, the spaniels can definitely cope with that. So that's why I went over to springers and would stick with springers for that work.
Do you get a lot of springers sort of coming to you for training for a lot of the disciplines? Like you said at the start, it was about sort of almost half your classes.
Yeah, Springers and Cockers. So probably slightly more Cockers than Springers, just because I think the Cockers are a bit more popular. You tend to see more of them. I think they got seriously popular through the sort of agility world, and then therefore have come into the more sport scent work. But yeah, I think Spaniels definitely. I think a lot of it is obviously, you get the handlers that want to be or are professional handlers, operational handlers that know that the Spaniel breeds are really, really good for detection work because of how much they love to hunt, they want to work. And then I think you get the people that have bought a working cocker or a Springer and then really, really need a job for that dog. So then they start getting into scent work and the sports scent work. I think that's probably why I get as many as I do.
And it's probably why we're seeing a lot coming through with doing sport trailing as well.
Yeah.
And things like that. Because obviously if you've got a dog with sort of high motivation, like you were talking about, it's then trying to find a job that's going to be able to sort of help them cope in the environment, especially if they're just a pet, but they have those drives, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's really good. I think it's a really, really good outlet for them. I've seen a lot of Spaniels come through that have changed a lot since doing search. So that, yeah, trailing or scent work, detection work, as long as they're sort of being able to have an outlet for their want to hunt rather than to sort of, when you sometimes you'll see them being constantly managed and they don't ever get that chance to do that. I think they can be a lot harder to own than if you can give them that outlet to actually be able to hunt and work. Because I feel like, they then sort of think they've actually done something that day. You can walk a spaniel for miles and miles and miles, but if it's just been on the lead and not actually got a chance to hunt, and I'm not saying hunt, wildlife or anything like that, but when they get that outlet to actually use their nose, I think that's how you can tire them out, which is I definitely think why that's a lot of people have started doing scent work and trailing so they can have a bit of peace and quiet at home in the evenings.
Absolutely.
And you were talking about
sorry, go on. It's the delay
go
on
on,
my
it's
end.
all right.
No, just saying it's that outlet, isn't it? I think everybody here that's on that Zoom today, or everybody's going to watch that Zoom, has a spaniel that they've walked for 20 miles and the dog comes home and goes, super, so I've recharged in the car for 20 minutes, what's next? And you're like, no. So the sooner search work, regardless of whatever the discipline is, using that dog's natural ability is just going to actually fulfill its need in life and make your life quite a lot easier.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's really important that, when we look at doing any of the search sports with them, especially detection work, that they do get that chance to hunt as well. I think a lot of the time we can focus on the fine side of it. And we were having a conversation at the seminar with Cameron a couple of weeks ago about, how the fine can often signal the end for the dogs because for our spaniels really it's the hunt, it's the search that they want to do. So I think having that understanding that actually the hunting part of it is rewarding for the dog and letting them have that is quite important.
Yeah, and that's something we see a lot with man trailing. Georgie has done man trailing and understands all that. It's not just search you do. You've done it. If there's a spaniel does it, you've done it. And we one of the biggest things that we get off spaniel owners is, oh, my dog doesn't want to get in with the trail layer, doesn't want to interact with the trail layer. They just want to hunt a hunt because they're not fulfilled on a short trail or a trail that's not got enough complexity. If they don't think they've worked hard enough, they're not going to go to source, and whatever that source is, whether it's human or scent or otherwise, because they know it's the end. They absolutely know it's the end every time.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you see it constantly. And also I think the difference as well is that I see it more in the Springers, but they're not really that people orientated either. So where you might get like a Cocker Spaniel, that's so, that they can be quite aroused by people, like really like people, like, use a Labrador as an example. They'll run a trail because they know they're going to get a game with a person at the end of it, which is why when I first started out in air scenting, I did have my lab and he was fantastic because you know, for him, he would search for hours and hours and hours. He got nothing out of the hunting side of it. It's because he knew he was getting his ball in a game at the end. But a lot of the spaniels, you don't have that. It's, you know, it isn't as easy, because your spaniel's like, well, I'm fine with the search, thanks. I don't need a cuddle. I don't need a ball. I don't need anything at the end. So it's making sure that we make the trail or the search in detection, whatever it might be, reinforcing for the dog, interesting enough for the dog, rather than, yeah, if you're doing, you know, the same track and it's not very long, you know, every Wednesday night or whatever, then yeah, your spaniels are likely to go, actually, there's like, you know, pheasant scent or rabbit scent, and that's a bit more interesting. I think I might go for that.
Yeah.
That's interesting, because I had, so for those that probably don't know, I've got a Springer from Georgie's last litter. And I was doing some search work outside with her today, and it's really easy to tell that the search is the most rewarding part. It just makes her whole body light up with excitement, and like I was sort of thinking today, going, oh no, the search is more important to her. I'm never going to be able to get a reward to match this. And actually, she doesn't really care. She just wants to search. And I think, sort of going back when we first started detection and trailing, I was always trying to get a reward that topped the search. Like, it always had to be bigger, it always had to be better. And for her today, just doing that hunt, that search, was just more rewarding to her than anything. So it's quite funny to see some of the dogs that just get to live that outlet, don't they, isn't it? It's like nice for them to sort of be able to do what's natural to them, without having to worry.
Yeah, and I mean, she's very much her mother's daughter. And Tulla is exactly like that. You know, I used to have a little squeaky fluffy Kong toy that I'd have in my life jacket pocket on the boat, and you know, when Tulla alerted, or, you know, at the end of a search where there was nothing, you know, you'd be like, oh, good girl, you know, that's great, here's your toy. And I mean, she put it in her mouth and be like, oh, I'm just literally doing this so that you think I like your reward. Can I just get on with it and search a bit more now? And it got to the point where, when she still had her life jacket on and was on the boat, I could put that toy in front of her and she was still working. It was, you know, when we got off the boat, life jacket came off, she might have a little game with me with the toy. But for her, yeah, 100%, the search was the most rewarding. And I think it is getting your head around the fact that it's like, well, that's fine. Like, you know, if they do a search and they find the ball and then they hunt again and then they go in the car, they've had the ultimate reward. That is their ultimate reward. Rather, I think sometimes we put it on us when we're like, oh, look at this new pink and purple, really fluffy, long tuggy with glitter. It's going to be amazing. She's going to love it. And then the dog's like, yeah, cheers for that, but long grass and hunting is much better. I think it's us actually accepting, like, okay, fine, that is what she likes. I've not failed because I can't find a reward for my dog. And there's nothing wrong with my dog because it doesn't like to, you know, play with the really nice purple tuggy. Her reward is the search. And it can make it more difficult to train them. You know, we do get our pups, you know, liking a toy or food if that works, because, you know, and I do put, you know, I have put specifically, like, you know, the sire of your pup, for example, Jolene, is a picking up dog. He picks up on shoots. He's not a beating dog. I did not need any more hunt drive at all than I already had. So I specifically went for a dog that picked up, so that he liked toys. And, you know, yeah, you can see from her, although, yeah, number one is the search for her, she'll pick up a toy and carry it around all the time. Whereas Tulla was never like that. I had to, one of her siblings, like, really had to put, when I wanted to do detection and use a tennis ball, I really made the effort to make her sort of into the tennis ball, rather than her having that sort of natural retrieve drive and natural ability of like wanting to pick up toys. So I've had to put that into my lines so that my springers have got that, because it does make them a lot easier to train. Obviously, for the basic stuff, if you've got something that you can give them.
Yeah, some reward makes it easier than sort of no reward. What would you say? So if we're talking about Tulla and her job on the boat as a drowned victim, you've obviously said that the search and her hunting was what you sort of looked for in her as a spaniel and the dog that you wanted. Was there anything else in her that you sort of saw that sort of thought, oh, actually, she'd be great for that job?
Yeah, so I bred her. So I was lucky enough to know, obviously I knew her mother, and then I selected the sire. So the sire, I didn't know anything about like spaniel lines or anything like that at all when I was breeding Tula. So I worked on a farm, and there was a Springer there that I used to, he was in, he was in the kennel there, and he was a picking up and beating dog. So I'd seen him work, and that dog would come out of the kennel and sit by the gate every single day, wasn't bothered about anything else. He was sat by that gate like, right, I'm ready, let's go to work. That's what I want to do today. And that's what he would do every single day. And there was no, like, so now 8 years down the line, he didn't have an off switch. He was very much, I just want to hunt, that's all I want to do. He was a biddable dog. He'd work, for you. It wasn't that he wanted to disappear and hunt. He would pick up really, really nicely, but he was what I'd call quite a hard spaniel. So you see now quite a lot of softer dogs that wouldn't deal with failure very well. So it was really important to me from what I'd seen from the drown victim stuff. So I was watching and learning about drown victim search for about a year before I bred Tula. So I knew sort of, as I'd seen other dogs, I'd seen some dogs that were really wanting to please the handler. So maybe they were false alerting. Some dogs that would just fall apart on the boat, after a while when there was no find. So I knew that I needed a dog that was quite a hard dog and didn't have that sort of anxiousness and softness that makes them want to please, that maybe you'd want with like a trialing dog, like, the field trial lines I don't tend to go for. Some of them are great, but some of them, they want a biddable dog. They don't want a dog generally that, decides what it's going to do by itself that day. Whereas really I wanted a dog that was quite happy being self-employed, because that's what she needed to do. On the boat, there's absolutely nothing that I could do for her at all. Other than, make sure I'm covering that lake or wherever it might be. She had to do everything. The boat moved on her changes in behavior. So there was nothing I could do. I can't say, let's search this area, let's look at these chairs, or let's look at this, this area here where there could be a hide. You're looking at a huge, great big flat lake with nothing else but water. So she had to be quite a confident dog, quite a bold dog, and she was always very aloof as a puppy. I picked her because of how she was. She was always very much, I can do this myself. I don't need any help. But in hindsight now, I would probably go for like the next puppy down from that one, which was like your puppy. So your puppy was like that, but she also actually really liked people and she liked to toy. Whereas I had another puppy in that litter who was just like Tula was. Like, let me get on with it. I don't want anything to do with you. I'm quite happy doing my job on my own. So I think now, in hindsight, yeah, I'd have gone for the pup that had like a little bit more ball drive, a little some sort of wanting to work with me, rather than completely self-employed.
And that can be quite a hard thing as well, isn't it? If we look at sort of pet owners as well who have got spaniels, trying to sort of give them the opportunity to work those outlets. You do find a lot of the spaniels that just switch off and go self-employed, don't you?
Yeah, definitely. I think that, it's really difficult. And some are worse than others. You know, one of mine that I bought in, he's very often on the line on certain walks because he hasn't got to the point yet where I make everything fun for him. He's still, the jury's out. He's like, well, I think actually I might be better doing this on my own right now. So he has a lot of time on the line at the moment. I've had him coming up 12 months now. But he was very much like, you know, I absolutely do not need a human in my life. They don't, you know, nothing fun comes from you. I can do this on my own. I'm very good at doing this on my own. So it took me a very long time for him to start, and he has started now to go, actually, she creates things that are quite fun. And it was just making it so that I gave him the ability to hunt. That's all I did with him. Just gave him an outlet and gave him an ability to hunt. So he wasn't hunting and until I created those scenarios for him to be able to hunt. I was lucky because he loves a rabbit ball. He's obsessed with a rabbit ball. So I just created opportunities for him where he could hunt for his rabbit ball. And he would probably get in that session, I'd say 90% of it was him hunting and about 10% of it was him bringing the ball back and having it thrown. And he's just turned a corner now where, you know, if I've got that ball out pretty much anywhere I am, maybe not in a field with 500 pheasants, but other than that, he'll pay attention to me. But yeah, I think it's quite difficult, and we can definitely manage them too much. I think it's that balance of you're right on that line, like you don't want to cross it, but you need to stay on that line or pretty close to it, because otherwise I think you're constantly in conflict with them.
Yeah, I think it's also really hard with a spaniel because a lot of them that I see these days are either quite soft, as you described, or a little bit nervous, or are just absolutely wild with just so much drive. It actually turns into sort of like a nervous kind of energy, really, that they've just got to do something all the time, and you just kind of can't fulfill it.
Yeah, I think that, you know, drive very much like very often gets mistaken for arousal, and I think that, yeah, especially with some of the cockers, the like agility line cockers, you see it, they just wanted, you know, small, fast, drivey dogs, and then you end up with dogs that are constantly over aroused, and then the same with the springers. They want them to be, you know, when you get the field trial dogs, you want a fast dog, a quick dog. It looks flashy, it's like quartering really nicely, hunting really nicely, really you know, really fast little dogs. And to have a dog like that you can then control, it needs to be very biddable, so that, you know, it doesn't hunt 100 miles an hour but carry on hunting 100 miles an hour. So therefore you get a load of arousal with quite a lot of anxiety then, because they, you know, they can be bred to be so biddable that, yeah, they end up soft. And yeah, it can go into nerves. I think that lines is a huge thing. I mean, I'm 9 years, 10 years nearly now into, you know, having bred spaniels and had spaniels. I've only just started really in the last 12 months to feel like I have some idea of lines and what I would want. But I think that nurture is huge, huge part of it as well, is how you bring them up. I mean, it's the same with all dogs, but I think that with spaniels especially, it's really important that they get to do what's natural to them. And, you know, when you're bringing them up, when they've got all this anxiety, I think it's really important to not micromanage them. You know, I see a lot of that, and then they get almost like cued for every tiny little thing in their life because they are so over aroused. I think we feel like we need to control everything that they do because they can't control themselves. And then actually, I think sometimes it can be a bit conflicting and make it worse.
Yeah, and it's also really hard then when somebody takes on a rescue dog as well.
To be fair, that people.
Oh, go on, Catherine.
Yeah. I just agree with you that people micromanage the spaniels instead of looking at them and going, hey, this is a spaniel, it needs to do X, Y, and Z in order to what we genetically coded it to do, and then we end up micromanaging it, it gets frustrated, and then ultimately it becomes this poor mess of anxiety and doesn't know what planet it's on. And that comes down to it was genetically coded to do X, Y, and Z, and we haven't given outlet, which is why we do man-training spaniels, because it's an outlet for that hunt behavior that's in a safe environment for those dogs when it's done correctly and when it's taught correctly. But it's interesting the way you talk about like those lines and what people are breeding for is for this specific task. But you know, when you have a litter of puppies, if you've got 10 puppies and 4 are going to working trials or whatever, and then the other 6 are going to normal pet homes that really aren't aware of what they've got, that's when you're the problem. But you do your cognition testing on the puppies to place them in the right homes, and that we're lucky enough, me and Jolene were lucky enough to test the litter that Jolene's got her puppy from, and it was extremely interesting to see the huge variety of personalities and as prediction of trainability as well. It's really interesting that you can predict what could become problem dogs at, what do we test them at, 6 or 7 weeks old?
Yeah, I mean, so ideally, like 8-9 weeks is good. Like 8 weeks is a really nice age, but yeah, they end up being 7.5 weeks, obviously, because they go to their new homes after that. So we did. So the puppy cognition is the same as the adult cognition that I do. The tests are different, obviously. But yeah, that was through Cameron Ford and Duke University. But I do also, which we did when you guys came, use some of the more standard puppy tests as well, because like the full hard tests, because they test them more sort of on environmental stuff as well. But yeah, the puppy cognition. So we just did a seminar now with some of the police dogs, and they test for your puppy's ability to problem solve, how high or low your puppy's memory is, which is, you know, can be really, really important when it comes to training for search work. And also what you do see in those tests hugely is like maybe puppies that don't want to be held, puppies that don't deal with frustration really well, maybe they're anxious in new environments, and up to 16 weeks old, you can actually change that. So, or research is showing that you can change that up to 16 weeks. So if you see that that puppy maybe doesn't like being held, doesn't like restraint, then, you know, you can work on that. Or maybe the puppy doesn't have very good frustration tolerance, then these are all things you can work on that if you didn't know about could obviously progress into worse behaviors later in life. So yeah, they are really, really helpful. I still very much, you know, look at my pups from day one. You know, they have their personalities and they develop. Obviously, I still feel like, you know, there's no sort of better test than that than when you breed them and you know them. Most puppies, if I usually breed my own, but if I'm buying a puppy in, I will usually say to the breeder exactly what I'm looking for, and, you know, pick me a puppy, unless it's specifically for, you know, color or something like that for breeding. Then it's usually I'll just say to the breeder, this is what I want, can you pick it, please?
Sorry, there's a massive delay my end, so I do apologise. No, it's really interesting because it's got to live in deepest, darkest Wales. To see, because I probably picked for years for different roles and bits and bobs when I worked in private security, and we never really had like standardized tests. But to see the litter, because it, what we're doing with some of the workshops with you, and obviously I see Jolene, to see the personalities really solidify after that 16 weeks, and being able to place them in appropriate homes for those puppies. But that lit out a huge variety of personalities. I know Julie's on and she's got a puppy at a litter, and he is like the complete opposite of his sisters.
Oh yeah.
But
He's very
we saw that
different.
when we tested him, like at 8 weeks, he's
Mhm.
like who gives a shit?
Yeah.
And then isn't lit, obviously you keep in touch with them and you know what they're doing. You can see those predictors of what their personalities are, and they haven't just, oh, they fulfilled it because the people knew. It's not that kind of thing. That is what at 8 weeks those personalities were pretty set, unless the owners they needed to put serious work in to change it. And when we're getting, you know, you're getting a rescue dog or you're getting a puppy, or you're picking a spaniel of whatever variety, and people aren't putting that kind of thought process into the personality of the puppy, as opposed to the puppy that picks them first, or because it's blue and polka dot and it's got a curly hair on its head. It's interesting to see where it's obvious to see where that conflict comes from, is wrong puppy, wrong home. And then, but that doesn't have to be the wrong home forever if people put the work in and actually outlets for those dogs, which is where obviously you do a hell of a lot of scent detection, where you probably see a lot of dogs suddenly become just like 10 times better and a much more of a harmonious relationship together, because you're giving them the outlet.
Yeah, definitely. I've had spaniels that literally wouldn't get out of the car. You know, they've come to 2 or 3 sessions just in the car, or been, you know, on the lead playing or something, you know, in the vicinity of the area whilst we're training, and then eventually to being, you know, off lead in a builder's yard or a transport yard, getting in and out of cars, on and off lorries, because of scent detection. So yeah, the confidence in the dogs, and it's the same with trailing. They just, you know, once you give them that outlet, then it gives them so much self-confidence. If you let them, you know, problem solve on their own and work this out on their own, then it just gives them this huge confidence. And, you know, you can see them, like I can remember teaching years ago, teaching a trailing workshop, and there was a dog that we'd had, and he was so nervous of gunshots. And this is when I lived in Wiltshire, so I was on the bottom of Salisbury Plain, so we had army gunshots all the time. And I can remember one night we were trailing, and they weren't supposed to be on exercise, and then they were, and they started shooting really near us, and he was on a trail at the time, and he used to like shut down, that would be it, she go home, because there was just no point. And he was on this trail, and you literally saw him like take a deep breath in and go like, right, I can do this. And he sort of took this deep breath and put his big shoulders up and was like, right, we are going, and like carried on the trail and got to the end. And like, you would never have thought that dog would have ever done that. And that was just, yeah, literally from, he was just doing trailing.
It makes such a difference to some dogs to be empowered, to not be suppressed, to not have all the genetics and this need, want to do, and like, oh, you can't do that, you can't be off the lead because you're sod off, you can't come and do zoomies around the house because you're in the furniture, you can't chew that up because it's an expensive dog toy. I say, looking at bits of dog toy on the floor, where my spaniel puppy has taken it apart, and to give them an outlet and build their confidence and reduce their anxiety makes all the difference in the world for those dogs. Because that wouldn't have happened if that dog hadn't done a sport that's appropriate for its needs. It would have probably bolted, I should imagine, if it was off the lead.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, it does make a difference. And it is also, I think, finding the outlet and how it works for that dog. You know, like my spaniels are very opinionated spaniels, and I breed them for independence. I want an independent dog. You know, there would be people that would want their spaniels a lot more biddable than some of mine, but when it comes to search work, I really like that. You know, that's what I want out of my dogs. I want them to feel confident that they can work for themselves, but they do come differently. I think this last litter they were incredibly different. I was very lucky with a lot of my puppy owners, Julie being one of them, because Julie had gone on the list wanting a black and white bitch and ended up with a liver and white dog, because he was going to be her first Springer Spaniel, and I couldn't do it to her to give her one of the black and white bitches, so Jolene got one instead. But I just knew that, so I taught Julie with her Irish Water Spaniel, who's can be a very anxious, reactive dog in some environments, where there's other dogs, but like he is can't even talk, as an example, will work through stuff, if he's working now and there's other dogs around. He's like, you'll see him, like, no, I can do this, I'll get on with the job. But he was a very, very steady spaniel, very steady spaniel. So when I knew that Julie was having one of my puppies, I was just like, I can't. My bitches generally are more independent, more outgoing. They're more likely to stick two fingers up at you than my dogs. And so with Pip, I just knew he was just Julie's dog from the start. So it was very much, I said to her, I have this dog, he's right, but he's not a girl and he's not black and white. But I just knew he was the right dog for her. And obviously, if she'd been set that she wanted a black liver and white girl, she could have had her deposit back and that would have been fine. And maybe one day I would have bred one that was biddable. But she's super happy with him now, and yeah, he's doing great. But he's not easy. She's had to find the right outlets for him. He still does. He's very he's a thinker. He's a very, very clever dog, and so everything she does, he's like, well, what's in it for me? I want to know what's in it for me. And that's exactly what he was like from a puppy. But if you gave him something, he was like, oh, okay, yeah, okay, we can do that. So he was more biddable, the most biddable she was going to get anyway from a litter of mine. But the boys generally are, and actually the liver and white boys generally are sort of better. I do notice a slight difference in the colours with mine.
Julie's on, and she just said that he's perfect.
Yeah, he's loved his truffle hunting, hasn't he?
Yeah, she said he's loved his truffle hunting and he could hunt for as long as he likes. So he's like, she sounds very smitten with him. It was definitely a choice.
He's but it was with him, it was finding that outlet with him, because we've all seen him on some of the courses that we've all been on together, when there's not that like harmony, because he's like, well, I don't think this is for me, I don't see the positive. And when he needs to see the positive. And she, I know she's just done this truffle hunting course with him, and you think, you're hunting, you're outside, he's probably getting a chance to be a bit more independent, and that's what he likes, and he's happy with that. So yeah, like she says, he'll then hunt for as long as she wants him to.
It's really good to see that we've discussed sort of the puppy cognition. You're testing some of your puppies soon, is that right?
Yes, I am. Yeah, my labs. Do you mean the puppies? Yeah, I am. Yeah. Yeah, we have 8 labs at the moment. So our lab bitch, she's like half spaniel, so she sort of gets in with the spaniel club a little bit. She is not half spaniel. She's a very nice, very well-bred lab. But she's a quick lab, she's a lovely lab to work. She'll hunt really well. But she reminded me of a spaniel. She was very much when my partner started training her, she was like, what's in this for me? She's trained as a gun dog, and she was like, well, I don't know if I can be bothered with all the obedience side of it. What is in this for me? And when she then like he gave her the outlet to be able to hunt as well, then she was like, oh, fine, we can do this. Like if I get to hunt as well, then that's fine. So she reminded me a lot of a spaniel, rather than the labs that are just like, I will do anything you want any time of the day. So we really wanted a puppy from her. And yeah, so we've got 8 labs. So yeah, we're puppy testing those, puppy cognition testing them. I think it's middle of May. I think there'll be about 6.5, coming up 7 weeks. And then I've also got in November, are you booked on, Julian? I know Julie is. Like, I've got some of the pups coming back to be tested as adults. So that'll be good, because they'll actually be my first litter that are coming back to be tested as adults that I've tested as puppies. So that'll be really, really good when they come back.
I think we're going to bum the directional one.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's a search queue. So I just put my hand out and then she goes to search in that area. So like, oh God, we're going to fail that one.
Yeah. You'll be surprised though, because if she's seen her rabbit ball go there, it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see what they do. So yeah, they'll be the first that I've bred puppy cognition tested, and then adult cognition tested. And then just before that in October, I'll have the Thames Valley police pups that we just did now. They'll be 8-9 months old, so we're adult cognition testing them in August. So that'll be October. So that'll be really, really good to see, you know, from their results, how they then test again as adults. But it's also, you know, handler influence. It doesn't change necessarily, you know, the dog's inference, their ability to problem solve or their memory, but it definitely influences it. So like exactly what you've just said, you know, her search cue is, you know, directional. So if she's being reinforced for that, then, you know, technically she might go that way. That test, just to explain to people quickly that don't have a clue what we are on about.
I was just about to say.
Yeah. That test is the first test, and we basically look at directional cues and handler influence on the test. So the puppies have it, and the adults have it. The puppies just have like a little micro version of it. And what we want is there's 2 buckets or 2 cups for the puppies, and they see where their reward goes. So the reward, for example, would go under the right cup or the right bucket, and then you as a handler would look and point at the left bucket. The dogs have been warmed up, so they know that the reward comes from the bucket, that their reward could be under the buckets. And then the dog's released to make a choice. And for detection work, search work, trailing, you ideally want the dogs to go where their reward is and not where we're directing them as a handler. So the reason for this is because, as an example, you know, if I'm out on a search and my dog hits odor and I'm calling my dog to say, you know, maybe we'll search here, I want my dog to say, no, the odor is here. I'm not listening to you. So, you know, you got to think basically that reward that goes under the bucket, it eventually becomes the odor. And I'd rather want my dog to have obedience to odor. And more than listening to my handler cues and my directions, to stick with the odor and, you know, where they know the odor is. So that's what that test tells you. Obviously, if you were looking at service dogs, for example, then you'd want the dog to go to where you were telling it to go. I see a lot of spaniels that do gun dog work, and some of them obviously will go to where they're directed, because they're very often taught, you know, ignore that dummy, go to the other way I'm directing you. So, you know, I had a dog, actually, I was just testing some dogs this week, and we had a cocker who did exactly that. But he did really good in all the other tests. It was just the fact that, you know, he's been taught ignore whatever is there if I'm telling you to go the other way. So handler influence and other sports that the dogs have been trained in obviously come into that quite a lot. And it really shows how we affect our dogs with cues, and how they can use their inference and their abilities. It definitely affects it. I think that we need to be aware of how much we can teach our dogs, and they can learn through their ability to problem solve. So either, you know, there's such a myth of the fact that, you know, a good detection dog or a good search dog has to be completely horrendously disobedient and, you know, have absolutely no manners whatsoever. I don't think that this is entirely true. I think it's the way the dogs are trained. So I think if they learn, you know, if a spaniel learns through problem solving, if it learns that if we wait and do nothing and then it sits and it gets sent to work, it learns to do that. Whereas if we're cueing it, it's looking to us for an instruction all the time. So like with mine, I'll just wait till one of mine, you know, sorts himself out, stops spinning around and prattling about. And when he sits down and he's calm, I'll let him go to search, rather than, you know, sit, or whatever I'm asking him to do. So then he's never looking to me for direction. And I think that's where sometimes it gets a little bit confused with them, really. I think we need to let them learn themselves and work things out, because they generally have a very, very strong ability to do that, rather than, yeah, micromanage them.
I think it can be quite hard as well as an owner, especially in this day and age when dogs can be have quite severe consequences, can't they, if they do something wrong, especially out in public, that we kind of almost fall into this category where we want to try and micromanage everything, probably. And we probably don't always allow them to make this choice and to problem solve. I think sometimes I can struggle with that, especially if I'm teaching a dog to do stuff like cues, like you sit, you down, this kind of stuff. It can be quite hard to then allow the dog and to not step in to problem solve by itself. And a lot of the time, that's where the dogs seem to get their strength from, isn't it, to be able to problem solve?
Yeah, and it starts as puppies. Like, you know, we'll when we separate the pups out, obviously 8 of them are not going to work it out all at the same time, but you know, you'll have 1 puppy or maybe 2 puppies, and when they sit down, they'll come out of the whelping box into the feeding area, and it just starts from there. Like, you know, now with the kennel, the kennel doesn't open until they're sitting, but we don't cue them all the time. They know that they sit, and that, you know, nothing's going to happen until they do that. And some dogs are different. You know, when one of mine first came, it took a long time of standing by the door until he was calm, and then he'd get to go out. But it's definitely worth it, because they are then using their own brain. They're working it out themselves. Because I think that we go into this, you know, detection or trailing, and we just suddenly expect them to be independent. You know, suddenly we're like, well, I don't know where the trail is, you know, you need to do this, you need to work it out. And if we've managed every other aspect of their life, I think that it can be, you know, almost the opposite. It can be quite difficult for them, because then they're like, well, you tell me everything I don't know, you answer, you tell me what I'm supposed to be doing, you tell me to get in the van or out the van or pick up the ball or sit down or wait here, or, you know, that there's no even when we do things with them like environmental stuff, you know, we'll tell them to get on the log, we'll give them the treat, we'll tell them to get off the log or the ramp or whatever it might be. So I think that when we then put them into like trailing especially, sometimes they can definitely get, you know, aren't very confident, and they can either look for the handler for help, or if they feel that pressure, then, you know, that's when we see them like sniffing other dog smells, or, you know, dog pee on the trail, or going off and getting distracted sniffing other things, because actually it's quite pressured. You know, they feel like it's quite a pressured environment for them. So I think a lot of us, you know, don't realize how important those foundations are of giving the dog that confidence and ability to problem solve. It's in my cognition presentation in red. It says, you know, a handler that often puts themselves in the problem solving equation can create a dog that commonly seeks the handler for help. And we see it all the time in trailing and search work. And I think that some people don't actually think outside the box about how they can help the dogs with this away from the search work, just in day-to-day life in general. I think if we think about how many times we actually ask our dog to work something out for itself away from search, it's probably not very much with a lot of people. So I think that, you know, we can actually do that and give them that confidence away from the search, that they would then find it much easier when they were working.
Yeah, definitely. And if we were to have So obviously we discussed the puppies, and puppies can be tested from sort of 8 weeks, isn't it, with these different tests? What's a good age for an adult to be able to come for cognition tests? And what is like an owner or a handler going to get from the results of these cognition tests for their dog and themselves?
So anywhere from 8 months. I mean, depending on the dog, they can be done from 6 months, but I would say between 8 and 12 months is really good. They can be tested at any age, as in from that, it doesn't matter. So if you've got an older dog, all you have to think about is the older that dog is, the more training you've done with that dog, then the more sort of handler influence, as in what you've taught the dog, may show in the tests more. Having said that, I got mine when he was 2, one of mine, and I tested him straight away, so that I knew how to train him. So what the tests will show you is they will show you, so you get a percentage. So they show you a percentage of your dog's inference, the dog's ability to problem solve, and then a percentage of what the dog's memory is. So they score in both. We test inference on one day, memory on the next day. But the tests give you a huge insight into how your dog learns, but also how they cope in a training environment. So when you look at things like arousal, so like the Yerkes-Dodson scale, you see in the tests where you get that like optimum performance level. So you'll see with some dogs, they'll come in and they get 6 repetitions on each test. You'll see that some dogs will absolutely nail it for the first 3 repetitions, and then they start to go downhill because they become over aroused or maybe disinterested. Or you see some of the dogs that might get, the first couple wrong because they are over aroused, for example, or super excited and aroused in that environment, and then they settle, and then for maybe the last 3 repetitions they then do really well. You then know that when you take that into a training environment, that 1 or 2 reps, 3 reps max, that's the best thing to do with that dog. Whereas another dog, actually it takes 2 or 3 repetitions to get settled into what you actually want it to learn. So you learn when that sort of optimum learning takes place with your dog. You'll see when your dog gets frustrated, when it doesn't get frustrated. So it's not just about their scores and how they do, it's what you see from that dog in a test. So you're then basically understanding how to train that dog to how that dog learns. So you've got a much more effective way of training the dog. So as an example, when they tested when they use these tests, so they've got a series of tests basically that are specifically for working dogs, working breeds. They're looking at selecting them for like detection, search, rescue, trailing. But you can absolutely test sport dogs. Most of the dogs I test are sport dogs. But when they tested them, they went to Navy SEALs and they used all of the tests. And when they were getting their green dogs in around 8 months old, they were getting 43% of their dogs were making it to deployment, so making it through all the training to operational level. When they then started using these tests to select the dogs that were making it through to deployment went up to 76%. And they also saw a 30% reduction in their training time. So they weren't actually testing for that, but attributing to knowing the dogs better, knowing how the dogs learnt. And then obviously they'd selected the dogs that would find the way they trained easier. They used their nose as opposed to using their memory. That's why their training was quicker. So it's a huge benefit to anyone with a dog to understand how their dog learns, and also trainers to be able to see, obviously, clients' dogs. It's helped me massively. I can quite, after doing it for 2-3 years now, I can quite clearly, I can see when a client's dog comes in, whether it's high memory or high inference, and therefore what we got to watch with it and how to set up that training.
Yeah, it's definitely quite I tested not for a specific role, just so I could sort of look and see where my dogs were and how they were learning. I've tested obviously 2 of them, and I've got the pup to do in November with Georgie. And it made such a difference to me, because now I can pretty much look at dogs on the trail, and or in scent detection when I teach, and I can pretty much be like, oh, actually, that dog's probably high in memory, and that dog's probably high in problem solving and things like that. And then it just gives you this better understanding. So you're not really in conflict, is probably what I've found with the dog, because they're learning on a better level, and you're teaching or instructing on a better level, because it's a better understanding, really.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have those. I see it, in every seminar when you're explaining about the memory and how to train it and what happens with high memory dogs. And you'll see so many people sat there like, oh, that makes so much sense. Like, you see a lot in the tests of like what you'll see in your dogs during training, but then obviously the tests, you can then understand that. I think someone said, are they explained online and things like that? Obviously I've just been through them a bit now, but there is a section on my website about the cognition, which just explains the tests a bit more. But you can go to the Duke University website as well and put in about canine cognition. Obviously it'll explain it more. But those tests specifically and the seminar specifically, they're explained on the website.
And would you say that sort of cognition tests would help somebody if they've got a rescue dog and they're potentially struggling with it a little bit?
Yeah, if they want to understand, learning about how that dog learns, that's exactly why I tested Gunner. He wasn't a rescue. I bought him, I'd been trying to persuade her to sell him to me for 2 years, and finally got him at 2. And, I cognition tested him because I was like, right, I've got this dog. He's like a Ferrari. I need to learn how to train him. And I cognition tested him, and it taught me that, right, he's got to be in the right frame of mind, calm, how to walk, how to wee. I need to plan what I'm doing with him and do very short sessions. And that's how he learns best. He needs to go in and have like learning time in the car, or, back in the kennel, wherever we happen to be. And then he comes out again. I pretty much never do more than 3 repetitions with him. It's usually like 1 or 2. And then he goes back in, and I can do that multiple times if he has break in between, but that's how he learns best. And I learned that from cognition testing him. So then from the off, I was able to train him in a way that was suitable for him and gave him a stronger ability to learn from what I was training him, as opposed to having no idea, going through, him getting over aroused, me getting frustrated because we weren't getting anywhere, and not understanding why, after 3 repetitions, this dog wasn't learning anything. Whereas my, Tulla, she can train her for 20, 25 minutes. She doesn't care. She'll keep going. Because she's just a complete different dog. But yes, and they got almost identical scores in their tests, but they tested completely differently from what I saw of how they tested. But yeah, their scores are almost identical.
Perfect. And is there any sort of things that, because obviously you've trained quite a few different sort of dogs for different aspects, and not all of those you've read. Is there anything that sort of maybe we can do as pet owners and things if we take on a rescue dog to help those dogs? Obviously getting into a sport is one of them, and finding an outlet for the dogs that have got drive. Obviously we've discussed canine cognition as well to help sort of owners and handlers.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything else?
Yeah, I think definitely, which, the cognition does feed into it, but I think it does go back to what I was saying earlier, just build that dog's ability to problem solve by itself. And you can do that by setting up, games at home. I start it with the pups, but you can do it with adults. We'll put you know, they get let out to their feeding area, and their feeding area is the same place every day. But, you know, we might put boxes or bags or something, you know, in the way, or maybe a surface that they're not, you know, that's a bit more like crackly, or it moves. And they then, you know, work their way through the boxes, or they go over the uneven environment to then get to the food. So we do it so that they will get much more confident. And then if they are, you know, if they do like a toy, or you can do it with food, we will literally just throw like a treat or the ball out into the long grass and build that hunt duration. And you can do that with all dogs. It doesn't have to be a spaniel. Obviously the spaniels, they enjoy it, but you've got to build up some sort of food or toy sort of motivation first. But definitely I think that I see with so many rescue dogs, like I think because they're a rescue dog, sometimes we sort of wrap them up in cotton wool and like we were saying, you know, micromanage their life a little bit. And actually I think sometimes if they're given the confidence to work little tiny things out at home, you know, before you even get to going to your first trailing session or your first search session, just letting them do things where they work it out for themselves, like you'll see it, like they'll come up and be really sort of proud of themselves, and they'll get that confidence, and those things can really, really help, I think, rather than being like, you know, oh my god, it's a rescue, like it's fine, you know, I'll do everything for you, I'll tell you every single step you've got to do because, you know, you're a rescue and I'll look after you. I think that actually it's really important to go like, yeah, look, you can do this, you've got the confidence to do this.
I'm just waiting because I'm not sure if there's a delay going through to Catherine, and I keep talking and then Catherine talks at the same time.
I'm just listening now. I'm just enjoying all this chat and sitting there going, yep, with my newest, who's not a spaniel, but going to be doing all those things with her to build her confidence up. So it's there's loads of things that we can do, and that's why these webinars and these conversations with like leading industry people like Georgie, who have, whether you've got a spaniel or not, or whatever breed of dog or whatever you've got, it's not like one size fits all. There's a gleam of learning and everything, and knowing more about your dog now, whether that's knowing about the genetics of your breed, just knowing what it's bred to do, or how they think, is really important to be able to progress forwards and to reduce the amount of like loggerheads that people come to with their dogs. I've just delved back into doing behavior work, and I tell you what, people haven't got a clue how their dogs think. And that's what I really enjoyed about cognition tests. I've hosted Georgie a few times, and I really loved watching those dogs problem solve. And then the owner suddenly go, "Oh, I see. That's why they do that." And it's doing that for the last 3 years. Because when I tested Captain's just merrily but dim. Like he's got low memory, low inference, and he just lives in a happy little world. My male Springer, he's just like, yep. And I was like, yep, that's the scores I expected. He's just like, what can I do for you? I'm here to live for you. Whereas Jin, my Springer, hers are pretty high. And it fits with everything about her. She's one of the most challenging dogs I've had because she's ever so bright, and her inference of problem solving is just extreme. So if I'm slow, or if I'm setting the same thing up too many times, she just goes, well, you don't mean that. Clearly it's much more complex than you've decided, and I'm going to just throw all these behaviors at you and break all the glass jars or cause trouble. So it's really good. But I would urge anybody, if you get opportunity, to just go and look at the cognition tests on your university, or if you do get a chance to go to a workshop, or even just spectate it. You'll learn loads spectating. I thoroughly enjoyed watching the other dogs work as much as mine, because it does give you an insight into that dog, and the relationship with that handler as well.
Are your so if people want to have a look for all that, Georgie, is it all on your website?
Yeah, so the information on the cognition is on the website. I will be putting a few new dates on the website for cognition testing seminars here, because the one in November just sold out out of nowhere. I think because we were talking about it so much on social media with Cameron, it just like suddenly it had been on my website for ages, and then all of a sudden it just was like sold out in an hour. So I was like, oh, okay, we need to put another one on. If you're nowhere near Wales, then I do some hosted seminars. So I have just been up to Scotland now, but they're really, really limited because well, it's nice here in Wales, so you can come on holiday and test your dog.
And you come see Georgie in mid Wales. It's really good. There's excellent dog walkers in the area, and it's well worth it as well, because it's what's going to be nice, I think, with the cognition workshops you're doing, is because you're getting people from a different variety of breeds from different parts of the country as well. It's nice to meet somebody different.
Yeah, it is good. Like, oh my God, the one I just did now, we had Cockers, a Newfoundland, a Weimaraner, a Tackle, a Shepherd, like, all sorts of different breeds.
Like the coolest accent in the world.
Oh yeah, we had, he was the best. He was awesome. Yeah, Dachshunds are just, they were fantastic. But so I will get more dates onto my website for seminars here that you can book onto. And then, I mean, if you're a trainer and you want to run one yourself, then I do some hosted ones. But the spaces are they're limited, because otherwise I'd be traveling around all the time, and I have too many dogs. We have too many dogs, and we have little children. So there will be more availability up here in Wales as opposed to elsewhere. But I can travel.
Super. Has anybody got any questions then from that kind of whirlwind tour of Spaniels are awesome, Georgie's got way too many dogs, and well, I shouldn't say that as me, so I'm not saying anything.
I was just about to say, what's the tally with both of you now?
I've got 8.
Well, mine's not bad right now though, because we're sort of in limbo, like waiting for puppies. So technically we don't have very many, but then it'll probably go up this year by like 3. So it's it'll be more soon. So I'm going to keep quiet about the fact that I don't have as many right now.
I don't know how you guys cope. Like 4 and I'm done.
Yours are in the house though, aren't they?
Mine do live inside, yeah.
My big ones live out, but my little ones are inside. So
ours have got very, very expensive kennels that they live in, most of them.
So got a question off Howell asking about how do you train for drowning victims?
Okay, imprinting or just in general? Well, so basically I would make sure that the dog obviously had plenty of time on the boat first, got really, really used to the boat. In an ideal world, I would imprint on human. I know that obviously a lot of like here, obviously it's very difficult. Most people imprint on pig because it's the closest scent to human scent. But if I could, I would imprint only on human. So I'd imprint the same as I imprint any other odor. I'd have taught the dog to search, and I would train. I'd imprint on a lineup, using boxes or pots, for example. But I would focus very, very early on there being nothing there. So on blank searches, because that's what your dog's going to get most of if it's doing drown victim search.
You need a drown victim search dog to have a lot of resilience, don't you? By the sounds of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've had another question. What age would you start to introduce a puppy into trailing? And obviously Catherine and Georgie can answer that one.
So I start all my pups from pups. So from when I got the puppy, but I start them really, really, really slowly. So foundations is so important to me. I know that you know, yeah, you can start doing it. I mean, with Catherine will be able to answer about the trailing probably a bit better, like for detection work, or if I was doing trailing, then, you know, I'd still start with all my foundations first. So like loads of environmental work with the puppy, getting the puppy really motivated on a reinforcer, used to different environments, and then obviously like slowly bring the foundations of trailing or, you know, detection into it. But yeah, I mean, you can start straight away. I think the important thing is just don't rush it.
Yeah, I'd second that. Is don't overdo it with tiny puppies with the trailing, or even whatever sport you do, or anything. Is it's supposed to be fun, is the phrase I keep saying all the time. And if you overdo it with trailing, with like especially depending on methods you use, if it's all high intensity, especially with a spaniel, you just create a monster.
Yeah.
Yeah, puppies, if you're doing it as like a sport stuff, you let little bits here and there. He's getting used to reinforce, but a lot getting used to being play, taking food. But a lot of the training you're doing with puppies really is you're getting your puppies to suit your lifestyle. Like
Yeah.
it's getting them used to the world, your sports stuff, or even your operational stuff. That work ethic, you shouldn't really be pushing any dogs until well, I would say 7-8 months old, really, for most stuff, because they just haven't got the capacity of brain cells for it.
Yeah.
The attention
Yeah, I agree.
So Susan's put, can I get into scent dog work? I don't own a dog now. However, my daughter has 2 cocker spaniels and currently studying the canine course at university. It depends what you mean by scent dog work. If you mean operational stuff, then you really need to do a course with a dog. Like you need to learn together. It's very difficult to do stuff without having a dog. But some courses you can buy it. If you talk about sports stuff, then take your daughter's cockers and yeah, just go head off to class. Find your nearest trainer and get started.
And Bernie's asked, does testing help you find ways to deal with frustration levels when teaching in a classroom environment? My guy loses the will to live in a class type lesson.
So do most of mine. I mean, so I think the cognition testing will show you your dog being frustrated, as in where your dog gets frustrated within learning. It won't tell you like how to stop your dog being frustrated. I can tell you, you know, if you've got a working breed dog that has got the motivation and drive that you would want for search work, I don't think it's a bad thing that it's getting frustrated in class, as in I don't think it's sort of negative against the dog. None of my dogs would sit in a class environment and watch another dog doing search work when they were just sat there on the lead. And if they did, I mean, they would, but they would become very over aroused and very frustrated in that environment, and then I wouldn't get the best learning out of that dog. So I know with the trailing and with all my detection workshops, the dogs are in the vehicle when they're not working. They work one at a time. They come out, they work, and then they go back in the car to chill out and, you know, get that latent learning phase, and then they come out and work again. I mean, if I had most of my clients' dogs, most of them, if they were out in like a class environment, it'd just be a nightmare and no one would do any learning.
Yeah, I think that's why a lot of these like higher drive dogs, or the dogs that are a bit more naughty, do really well in like descent detection and man trailing type stuff, because they spend time back in the car nice and calm, and then they get to work, and they get to work nice and hard, and they get to really and fulfill their breed traits, and they're not sitting there going, well, when is it my turn, staring at another dog, bored out of their mind, forced to settle.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. I mean, none of the dogs that I breed or own, I don't really breed for them to sit quietly in a classroom. It's good, you know, as puppies, get them out and do it. Not saying don't take them to group classes at all, but once they know what they're doing and what's what with like search work and stuff, that's hard to then ask them to watch other dogs doing that.
We've then got Susan's reply. She says, thanks, possibly conservation work. I've done a short course with Cadaver, plus a week's training, including assessment and practical in university mature student. However, I'm inspired. And her original question was, can I get into scent work? I don't own my own dog now. However, her daughter has got 2 cockers.
So I assume you've done a course recently at Wrexham University then, because they've just done a course. There's bits and bobs up there, which is cool. With I think David Jones, so they could have his stuff.
Yeah, Dave does the stuff at Wrexham.
Yeah, I think Conservation Canine are doing stuff as well.
Of course, sort of Facebook stalking for to see what people are up to. It pops up because I would like Wrexham University. I'm like, oh, need to go.
Yeah, I think if you want to get into I get asked all the time about people wanting to get into conservation work, and I think it's really important to actually learn about what you want to do and learn about conservation away from the dog side of it. I think that it is as important. I mean, I did a really, really good conservation handler course with Cryos Canine. They're very good for conservation. I am technically a qualified conservation dog handler. I would never, ever take my dog out on a conservation job or, decide I'm going to have a conservation dog operationally, because I do not have a clue about conservation. So, I can train your conservation dog for up to a level, as in teaching it to search and imprinting, working it outside, but understanding surveys and how to collect samples and everything like that, and also understanding the species that you're going to look for, that that you want to work with. I think that's where you need to go down the route of learning about all that stuff as well.
There's a lot of stuff to conservation in the background of kind of you have to get involved in research product. There's loads of working towards a goal. The dog's like the last bit.
It is. I mean, there's loads of amazing people doing conservation, and most of the ones that I know that are doing conservation are like ecologists or biologists as well.
I was just about to say that a lot of the people I know that are doing conservation are ecologists and things, and they've got that background, and then they've gone and got the dog. And that's probably a way that you would tell somebody as well, isn't it, to go and whatever sort of operational, say, role that somebody wanted, you would be like, go and find out about it first and then find the dog for the job.
It is massively.
That's the way around it should be. If you're going to work anything operational, because I used to work in operational detection dogs and security dogs, you're better off learning about it, going and shadowing, going and learning with as many people possible before you go and invest in a dog, because the wrong dog will cost you a lot. Like you may never work it, but it might cost you 2 years in training for the working type stuff, regardless of what you want to work it in. Even if you want it as a gun dog, like go and learn what you want first before investing in a puppy or a rescue dog.
And if you want to work a dog in a certain discipline, you need to go and learn from someone that's working a dog in that discipline. That's what I would always do.
Absolutely.
Cats. Oh, go on. Yep.
I think bitches are more independent opposed to dogs in the same litter.
Why do I?
Yeah, so why do you think bitches are more independent opposed to dogs in the same litter?
I'm assuming he's on about your litter.
Bitches in general are more independent than dogs. So I don't know the scientifics as to why they are, but I think from experience, they generally are more independent dogs than dogs. A dog is much more likely to ask you what you want, or bitches are still very, very loyal dogs, but I do feel like they've sort of got it together a bit more. They don't need our help quite as much. They're independent women.
So asked me today, they said, oh, do you prefer dogs over bitches? And I said, look, a bitch you teach them once and they go, but I'm not doing it. And a dog you have to tell them 1,000 times and they go, oh, is that what you wanted? Brilliant, fine, super, I've got it now. And then they've got it and then you never teach it again. But a bitch will look at you and go, don't be so thick.
Well, we always used to say the same, like with horses. It's like, you can tell a gelding, ask a mare. It's like, that's exactly how it is.
It must be something to do with evolutionary lines, to do with survival, somewhere on the line, because I think it's the same species over, and humans are the same as well, aren't we? You can ask the woman if you're allowed to do it. You'll tell the bloke he's doing it.
exactly.
Not very PC.
The blokes now like typing away going, how dare you.
Yeah, we can
All the
see it's
blokes
like
just
an
logged off.
email's just like so and so left, so and so
Yeah.
left.
It's all right. The abuse, so like he's used to it. He still comes Mantrelli with me, so it's his own choice.
Well, we need men in our lives as well, so
Absolutely we do, because well, we might think we're a bit smarter. There's other stuff that we cannot do. I'll tell you what,
yeah,
I can't
exactly.
my life.
Mine is currently cooking my tea because I've taken so long talking about spaniels, so you know I need him in my life, otherwise I'd be very hungry.
Right, super. Any more
Kat's just said, okay, thanks. I think our two are mixed up then.
I mean, yeah, it's not the same for everyone, you know, and obviously the lines is going to come into it massively. Genetics is going to come into it massively.
The coolest little Cocker Spaniel and then the gobbiest Labrador the world has ever seen. So he's got cool little dogs. So yeah, they're not like anything. Like you could do the cognition test and it could tell you your dog's got high memory and low inference or whatever. And you go out in the real world and go, well, no, actually, that isn't what it is. It's like any there is rough kind of rules and boxes that dogs and tests tell us, but really when it comes down to it, it doesn't. It just gives you an idea.
Yeah, exactly.
A rough idea of a situation at hand. Thank you so much for your time tonight, Georgie. We had you an hour and a half. So thank you very much.
That's okay.
When we post the recording up, I'll post the links all over to Endeavour Canine and Georgie and all the stuff that she's doing. Go and stalk her on Facebook. And we're doing lots of workshops with her this year, me and Jolene, with the track and trailing. She's hosting some cool people. So if you come on anything, there'll probably be one of us there as well, floating around with several spaniels in our hands. But yeah, definitely get on with some of the Endeavour Canine stuff. And if you can get your opportunity to go on a cognition course, even if it's to just spectate one, it's really interesting and you will take a lot away from it. I've taken a lot every time I've done one with you. So it's really interesting.
Yeah, they're really good. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Super.
Thanks,
Bye,
guys.
guys.